The Manson family was a commune gang and cult led by criminal Charles Manson that was active in California in the late 1960s and early 1970s. At its peak, the group consisted of approximately 100 followers who lived an unconventional lifestyle, frequently using psychoactive drugs, including amphetamine and hallucinogens such as LSD. LSD is truly a different breed than mushrooms, I guess because it's chemically made. Most of them were young women from middle-class backgrounds, many of whom were attracted by hippie counterculture and communal living, and then radicalized by Manson's teachings. There he is, coming out like the Undertaker. I've known very vague things about this case, including when they included the loose take of the Tate murders in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I've always just known that he was like a cult leader, some ties to MK Ultra, CIA type stuff. There's a unbelievable book apparently called, I think, Chaos, that dives beyond deep into that. We're not going that deep down the rabbit hole today. If you guys want to, maybe we can down the line, but the group murdered at least 9 people and may have killed as many as 24. I didn't know the body count was that high. This is Sharon Tate, the actress who they portrayed as Margot Robbie in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Manson had been institutionalized or incarcerated for more than half of his life by the time he was released from prison in 1967. He began attracting acolytes in the San Francisco Bay Area. They gradually moved to a rundown movie ranch called the Spahn Ranch. I remember the Spahn Ranch from the movie too. In Los Angeles County is where it was located. According to the group member Susan Atkins, members of the family became convinced that Manson was a manifestation of Jesus Christ and believed in his prophecies concerning an imminent apocalyptic race war. In 1969, Manson family member Atkins, Charles Denton Tex Watson, and Patricia Krenwinkel, these names are fantastic, they entered the home of actress Sharon Tate and murdered her and 4 others. Linda Kasabian was also present but did not partake. Okay. The following night, members of the family murdered supermarket executive Tate LaBianca and his wife Rosemary at their home in Los Angeles. Members also committed a number of assaults, petty crimes, theft, and street vandalism, including an assassination attempt on U.S. President Gerald Ford in 1975 by a family member, Lynette Squeaky Fromade. These names are crazy. I like that they all, well, I don't like, but it's interesting that they all have that middle name, like Dopey, Sleepy, whatever. The dwarves, they all have a nickname like that, code name. It's crazy. Around here, we call you Squeaky. Crazy, dude. The following is an incomplete list of individuals associated with the Manson family. This is a long list, so this is Danny DiCarlo, Sandra Good, oh man, Greg Jacobson. Holy crap, dude. Dennis Rice, that is a phenomenal name. It's like Mother Coconuts. Wow, Tex Watson. Get him, Tex. Following his release from prison on March 22, 1967, Charles Manson moved to San Francisco, where, with the help of a prison acquaintance, he moved into an apartment in Berkeley. In prison, bank robber Alvin Karpis had taught Manson to play the steel guitar. Living mostly by begging, Manson soon became acquainted with Mary Bruner, a 23-year-old graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison who was working as a library assistant at the University of California, Berkeley, and moved in with her. Oh, what could go wrong here? The thing about him that's crazy to me is I haven't seen any pictures of what he looked like prior to looking like a maniac like this, because he was winning all these people over with his prophecies and all this crap, but like you look at this guy and you're like, no, he's Jesus Christ, bro. What the hell is wrong with these people, man? Crazy stuff. According to secondhand account, Manson overcame Brunner's resistance to him bringing other women in to live with them. Before long, the pair were sharing Brunner's residence with 18 other women. Manson established himself as a guru in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district. which during 1967's Summer of Love was emerging as the signature hippie locale. He may have borrowed some of his philosophy from the Process Church of the Final Judgment. I don't even know what that is. Members of which believe Satan would become reconciled to Jesus and they would come together at the end of the world to judge humanity. They're going to be sitting on the Brooklyn Bridge, just judging. Wow, that's crazy. Dude, yet again. Oh my God, bro. Manson soon had the first of his groups of followers, most of them female. They were later dubbed the Manson Family by Los Angeles prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi, what a name, and the media. Manson allegedly taught his followers that they were the reincarnation of the original Christians, and that the establishment could be characterized as the Romans. Sometime around 1967, he began using the alias Charles Willis Manson. Shout out Bruce Willis, bro. He ain't doing so hot no more. Before the end of the summer, Manson and some of his followers began traveling in an old school bus they had adapted, putting colored rugs and pillows in place of the many seats they had removed. They eventually settled in Los Angeles areas of Topanga Canyon, Malibu, and Venice. In 1967, Brunner became pregnant by Manson. On April 15, 1968, she gave birth to their son, whom she named Valentine Michael, in a condemned house where they were living in Topanga County. Well, that's nice. She was assisted by several of the young women from the family. Like most of the members of the group, Brunner acquired the number of aliases and nicknames including Marioche, Ouch, Mother Mary, Mary Manson, Linda D. Manson, and Christine Mary Ukes. What the hell are these names? Why do you have 7 names? Like, if you're going to have an alter ego, Jefferson Stillflex, you got one alter ego. You don't come up with 1,700 of them. But then we are dealing with... This picture is crazy. This is going to end up being my profile picture for Mother Coconuts, my alter ego. Oh, Sharon Tate, bro. That's so sad. I don't even know what she was in. These must be his groupies. I wonder which one of them is Brunner. That photo goes hard, though. If you put that, like, black bar that says censored or something. No, what does it say? Actor Al Lewis had Manson babysit his children on a couple of occasions and described him as a nice guy when I knew him. Music producer Phil Kaufman introduced Manson to Universal Studios producer Gary Stromberg. Then working on a film adaptation of The Life of Jesus set in modern America, featuring a black Jesus and a southern redneck Romans. Stromberg thought that Manson made interesting suggestions about what Jesus might do in a situation. Seeming to be attuned to the role, he had one of his women kiss his feet and then kissed hers in return to demonstrate the place of women. At the beach one day, Stromberg watched while Manson preached against a materialistic outlook. One of his listeners questioned him about the well-furnished bus. Manson tossed the bus keys to the doubter, who promptly drove the bus away while Manson watched, apparently unconcerned. He just gave away the bus they worked on for 7 years. It's weird how he's got connections and in like that to the movie industry and making all this religious stuff. Like, what is going on, bro? According to Stromberg, Manson had a dynamic personality. He was able to read a person's emotional weaknesses and manipulate them. For example, Manson tried to manipulate Danny DiCarlo, the treasurer of the Straight Satan's Motorcycle Club, by granting him access to family women. He convinced DiCarlo that his large peener helped keep the women in the group. Yeah, these guys ain't playing with a full deck, I'll tell you that. Yo, your peener is helping the women stay in the group. Oh my God, bro. This guy probably fell for it like it was nothing. Danny DiCarlo, not to be confused with Danny DeVito. Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys picked up Patricia Krenwinkel and Ella Jo Bailey when they were hitchhiking in late spring 1968. While under the influence of alcohol and LSD, that is not a combo I don't think you should be under, hence probably why these people will go off the rails, Wilson took them to his Pacific Palisades house for a few hours. The following morning, when he returned home from a night recording session, he was greeted by Manson in the driveway, who emerged from his house. Wilson asked the stranger whether he intended to hurt him. Manson assured him that he had no such intent and began kissing Wilson's feet. Inside the house, Wilson discovered 12 strangers, mostly women. Oh, he's about to be like, yo, take your pick, Danny Wilson from the Beach Boys. I actually don't know many Beach Boys songs. Maybe one from when they were featured on Full House. Not a Subaru Summer. What does he sing? It's something like that, you know? The account given in Manson, in his own words, is that Manson first met Wilson at a friend's San Francisco house where Manson had gone to obtain marijuana. Manson claimed that Wilson gave him his Sunset Boulevard address and invited him to stop by when he came to Los Angeles. I lost my place. Wilson said in a 1968 Record Mirror article that when he mentioned the Beach Boys' involvement with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi to a group of strange women, they told me they too had a guru, a guy named Charlie. Okay, so the Beach Boy guy has an in with this leader, this guru guy, this non-religious or religious, like monk-looking guy. So that he says that to a group of strange women, and then they go, "Oh, we have a guru too, a guy named Charlie." Over the next few months, the number of women doubled in Wilson's house. Man, it's getting too far gone already. He covered their costs, which amounted to approximately $100,000. This total included a large medical bill for treatment of their gonorrhea and $21,000 for the destruction of his uninsured car, which they borrowed. That's a big STD bill. Wilson's would sing and talk with Manson, and both men treated the women as servants. Wilson paid for studio time to record songs written and performed by Manson and introduced him to entertainment business acquaintances, including Greg Jacobson, Terry Melcher, and Rudy Altobelli. The latter man owned a house which he rented to actress Sharon Tate and her husband, director Roman Polanski. I remember the name Roman Polanski too. Jacobson was impressed by the whole Charlie Manson package of artist, lifestylist, and philosopher, and he paid to record Manson's material. Wilson moved out of his rented home when the lease expired, and his landlord evicted the family. That is insane, the connections this guy, and the is it truly by coincidence he met the Beach Boy guy and then they just become best friends? If that's the case, that's insane. I didn't know he had a music career, an aspiring music-esque career, apparently. The next JB. Manson established a base for the family at Spahn Ranch in August 1968 after Wilson's landlord evicted them. It had been a television movie set for westerns, but the building had deteriorated by the time the family first appeared at the property. By the late 1960s, the ranch had delivered revenue primarily from selling horseback rides. So you just got a bunch of random people coming through too. I'm sure they're going to be able to recruit some bastards rolling by on a horse. Female family members did chores around the ranch and occasionally had sex with Manson's orders with the ranch's nearly blind 80-year-old owner, George Spahn. So that's how they're staying on the ranch. He's like, yo, you go on George Spahn, and then we're gonna be able to stay. That would be a cool place, like if they renovated the lot, living on a movie set like that, at least for like a month or two. That's cool. It's like a sick Airbnb, but they're using it as their evil lair. The women also acted as guides for him in exchange. Spahn allowed Manson's group to live at the ranch for free. Yep, there you go. They got the deal with the devil, or he does. Lynette Fromm acquired the nickname Squeaky because she often squeaked when Spahn pinched her thigh. Yeah, don't be pinching her thigh too hard now. Fucking George. Charles Watson, a small-town Texan who had quit college and moved to California, soon joined the group at the ranch. They're growing. They're growing, dude. Like a fucking cancer. On March 23, 1969, Manson entered the grounds of 150 Cielo Drive, which he had known as Melcher's residence. He was not invited. As he approached the main house, Manson was met by Sharok Hatami, an Iranian photographer who had befriended Polanski and Tate during the making of the documentary Mia and Roman. He was there to photograph Tate before she departed for Rome the next day. Seeing Manson approach, Hatami had gone into the front porch to ask him what he wanted. Manson said that he was looking for someone whose name Hatami did not recognize. Hatami told him the place was the Polanski residence. He advised Manson to try the back alley, by which he meant the path to the guest house beyond the main house. Concerned about the stranger, he had gone down to the front walk to confront Manson. Tate appeared behind Hatami in the house's front door and asked him who he was calling. Hatami said that a man was looking for someone. He and Tate maintained their positions while Manson went back to the guest house without a word, returned to the front a minute or two later, and left. He's scouting the place out, dude. That evening, Manson returned to the property and again went into the guest house. He entered the enclosed porch and spoke with Atol Bali, the owner, who had just come out of the shower. Manson asked for Melcher, but Altobi felt that Manson was looking for him. It was later discovered that Manson had apparently been to the property on earlier occasions after Melcher left. Dude, he's just bumming around, this guy. Altobelli told Manson through the screen door that Melcher had moved to Malibu and said that he did not know his new address, although he actually did. Altobelli said that he was in the entertainment business. He had met Manson the previous year at Wilson's home and was sure that Manson already knew that. At that meeting, he had given limited compliments to Manson on some of his musical recordings which Wilson had been playing. Altobelli told Manson he was leaving the country the next day, and Manson said he would like to speak with him upon his return. Altobelli said that he would be gone for more than a year. Manson said that he had been directed to the guest house by the persons in the main house. Altobelli asked Manson not to disturb his tenants. What did he do? I'm gonna guess he's gonna go disturb the tenants. Altobelli and Tate flew together to Rome the next day. Tate asked them whether that creepy-looking guy had gone to see him at the guest house the day before. The Bernard Crowe shooting. Tex Watson became involved in a drug dealing and robbed a drug dealer named Bernard Latsapapa Crowe. Crowe allegedly responded with a threat to kill everyone at Spahn Ranch. In response, Charles Manson shot Crowe on July 1st, 1969 at Manson's Hollywood. You fuck with my people. The old Rick Grimes shit, dude. He went there and took care of it before it became a problem. That's some turf war shit. Manson's belief that he had killed Crowe was seemingly confirmed by a news report of the discovery of the dumped body of a Black Panther in Los Angeles. Although Crowe was not a member of the Black Panthers, Manson concluded that he had been and expected retaliation from the Panthers. He returned to Spahn Ranch into a defensive camp, establishing night patrols by armed guards. Tex Watson would later write, Blackie was trying to get at the Chosen Ones. The Chosen Ones? Bro, this isn't Bakugan. What are you talking about? Manson brought in members of the Straight Satan's Motorcycle Club to act as security. At this time, Bobby Bayosoleleli became more involved with the family. So who's this Bobby character? Who's that? Bobby. Oh, he looks gross. Alright, Robert Kenneth Boswell is an American murderer and associate of Charles Manson and the members of his communal Manson family. He was convicted and sentenced to death for the July 27, 1969 fatal stabbing of Gary Hinman, who had befriended him and other Manson associates. We're getting ahead of ourselves right now. The Hinman murder. Gary Allen Hinman was a music teacher and PhD student at UCLA. At some point in the late 1960s, he befriended members of the Manson family, allowing some to occasionally stay at his home. According to some people, including family member Susan Atkins, Manson believed Hinman was wealthy. He sent family members Bobby Boswell Mary Brunner and Atkins to Hinman's home on July 25th, 1969, to convince him to join the family and turn over the assets Manson thought Hinman had inherited. He's going after that money. He wants that money. The three held Hinman hostage for 2 days as he denied having any money. During this time, Manson arrived with a sword and slashed Hinman's face and ear. After that, Bassalel stabbed Hinman to death, allegedly on Manson's instruction. Before leaving the Topanga Canyon residence, Bassalel, or one of the women, used Hinman's blood to write "political piggy" on the wall and draw a panther paw, a Black Panther symbol. Dude, is that going to be all their excuses? Well, he told me to do it. So what? Obviously, they're not playing with a full deck, but that's insane. That's insane. Allegedly, something like Jared Leto has had a cult going on, but then some people defend it. I don't know. I got no clue. I'm not a part of Jared Leto's cult. I would be interested to see what's going on down there. But some people are like, nah, he's just partying. He's got a bunch of chicks on an island and everything. But they're like, he's a rock star, so he's gonna do that. He's Morpheus, bro. Morbius. According to Manson and Bassalel in magazine interviews of 1981 and 1998 through 1999, Bassalel said he went to Hinman's to recover money paid to Hinman for mescaline provided to the straight Satans that he had supposedly been bad. Bassalel added that Brunner and Atkins, unaware of his intent, went along to visit Hinman. Atkins, in her 1977 autobiography, wrote that Manson directed Bassalel, Brunner, and her to go to Hinman's and get the supposed inheritance of $21,000. She said that 2 days earlier, Manson had told her privately that if she wanted to do something important, she could kill Hinman and get his money. 21 grand back in the 60s, 70s, late 60s is what this was going on? Yeah, 69. 21 grand. That's got to be probably close to 100 grand. How much was $21,000 in 1969?
Oh, sweetie, in 1969, $21,000 was like having a golden dick in a world of limp noodles. Adjusted for inflation, that's about 166 grand in today's money. Enough to buy a decent house.
That's a lot of money, yeah. What'd you say, 166? Are you speaking French?
Nah, I'm not spitting French, you cheeky fucker. Just slinging English filthier than a dive bar toilet.
Bassalel was arrested on August 6th, 1969, after he was caught driving Hinman's car. Police found the murder weapon in the tire well. The sword of Lucifer. Manson's running around with a fucking sword, bro. The murders of Tate, Sebring, Folger, Frykowski, and Parent. Dude, the names of the people involved in this just are next level. On the night of August 8th, 1969, Manson directed Tex Watson to take Susan Atkins, Linda Kasabian, and Patricia Krenwinkel to Melcher's former home at 150 Cielo Drive in Los Angeles. According to Watson, Manson told them to kill everyone there. The home had recently been rented to actress Sharon Tate and her husband, director Roman Polanski. Polanski was away in Europe working on The Day of the Dolphin at the time. Manson told the three women to do as Watson told them. The family members killed the 5 people they found. Sharon Tate, 8.5 months pregnant at the time, who was living there, Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, and Wojciech Frykowski, who were visiting her, and Stephen Parent, who had been visiting the caretaker of the home. Atkins wrote "pig" with Tate's blood on the front door as they left. The murders created a nationwide sensation. I hope they go into why that was their target, because there's no way that's simply just from being crazy. I mean, they did it for a reason. I'm not saying that's the right reason, but I'm saying what in their brain made them execute Order 66. That's awful, right? In the fucking, with your own blood on your own door. The night of August 9th, 1969, 7 family members drove to the home of Leno and Rosemary LaBianca. Watson said that, having gone there alone, Manson returned to take him to the house with him. After Manson appointed through a window to a man sleeping in the living room. The two men entered the house through an unlocked back door. Lock your doors. It's fascinating back in the day, though. You ask people in certain neighborhoods, they were like, no, we never locked our doors. That's crazy. That's crazy. Oh, man. Watson bound the couple and covered their heads with pillowcases. Manson left, sending Krenwinkel and Van Houten into the house. Now he's sending them to do the work. Watson sent the woman to the bedroom where Rosemary had been bound. He began stabbing Leno with a bayonet in the living room. Where are you getting a bayonet, man? Going to the bedroom, Watson discovered Rosemary swinging a lamp at the family women. He stabbed her with the bayonet and returned to the living room to resume attacking Leno, whom he stabbed 12 times. Krenwinkel stabbed Rosemary. Watson told Van Houten to stab the woman too, which she did. Krenwinkel used the LaBianca's blood to write "Rise and Death to Pigs" on the walls and "Helter Skelter" on the refrigerator door. Bro. That wasn't a burp. That sounded like a burp, but I just went, bro. Meanwhile, Manson directed Casabian, the prisoner Caspian, to drive to the home of an acquaintance of hers. Manson dropped off Casabian, Grogan, and Atkins and drove back to the Spahn Ranch. Casabian allegedly thwarted a murder by deliberately knocking on the wrong door. The Shea murder. In a 1971 trial that took place after his Tate LaBianca convictions, Manson was found guilty of the murders of Gary Hinman and Donald Shorty Shea. He was given a life sentence. Shea was a Spahn Ranch stuntman and horse wrangler who had been killed approximately 10 days after a sheriff's raid on the ranch, which had been carried out on August 16, 1969. Manson, who suspected that Shea had helped set up the raid, apparently believed Shea was trying to get Spahn Ranch to run the family off of the ranch. Manson may have considered it a sin that Shea, a white man, had married a black woman. Furthermore, there was the possibility that Shea knew about the Tate LaBianca killings. In separate trials, family members Bruce Davis and Steve Clem Grogan were also found guilty of the Shea murders. They're going down. They're going down. In 1977, authorities learned the exact location of the remains of Shorty Shea, and contrary to family claims, also learned that Shea had not been dismembered and buried in several places. Contacting the prosecutor in his case, Steve Grogan told him Shea's corpse had been buried intact. Grogan drew a map that pinpointed to the location, and the body was recovered. Of those convicted of Manson's ordered murders, Grogan would become, in 1985, the first one to be paroled. Yo, what the hell are you giving these people even parole? Like, what is going on here? This coffee tastes like ass. The milk frother did not froth. I don't know why. In total, Manson and his followers were convicted of 9 counts of first-degree murder. However, the LAPD believes that the family could have claimed up to at least 12 more victims. Cliff Shepard, a former LAPD robbery homicide division detective, said that Manson repeatedly claimed to have killed many others. Prosecutor Stephen Kay supported this assertion. I know that Manson one time told me of his cellmates that he was responsible for 35 murders. Yeah, but this guy's so off the rails that, I don't know, you can't really trust anything he says. He's bragging to the cellies, bro. That's insane. Tate's younger sister, Deborah Tate, has also claimed that investigators are just scraping the surface when it comes to the number of Manson's victims, and has further elaborated on how Manson sent her a taunting map of the Panamint Range? What is that? With crosses on it that she believed were meant to represent buried bodies. Oh, we sending her like a zodiac type thing. This had resulted in several excavations that have been undertaken at Manson's Barker Ranch, but they have not resulted in any bodies being found. That's what I mean. He seems like he's just screwing with these people at this point. Nancy Warren, 65, and Clyda Delaney, 24, were both found near Ukiah, California at the antique store owned by Warren on October 13th, 1968. They had both been beaten and strangled to death with 36 leather thongs. Why do you have that many thongs? After the family members were arrested, they became suspects when it was discovered that members of the family had been in the Ukiah area at the time of the murders. However, no one in the family was ever charged with the murders and no arrests were ever made in the case. Marina Elizabeth Habe, age 17, was murdered on December 30th, 1968. She was a student at the University of Hawaii, home on vacation when she was murdered in Los Angeles. According to the autopsy report, Habe's throat had been slashed and she had received numerous knife wounds to the chest. She suffered multiple contusions to the face and throat and had been garroted, I still don't know how you say that. There was no evidence of R-word. Habe was abducted outside the home of her mother in West Hollywood, 8962 Cynthia Avenue. A former Manson family associate claimed members of the family had known Habe and it was conjecture she had been one of their victims. Darwin Morrell Scott, age 64, was the uncle of Manson and the brother of Manson's father, Colonel Scott. Not the Colonel, bro. On May 27th, 1969, Scott was found brutally stabbed to death in his Ashland, Kentucky apartment. His body was pinned to the kitchen floor with a butcher knife, and he had been stabbed 19 times. These murders all are heavily, similar? Pulling a Michael Myers, too. The knife pinning you to something, to the floor rather than the wall, but even still, that's... After Manson's arrest, it was reported to local residents claimed to have seen a man resembling Manson using the alias Preacher in the area at the time Darwin was murdered. Manson was on parole in California at the time of the murder, but the murder occurred when Manson was out of touch with his parole officers. Mark Nut, 16, was an acquaintance of the family member. Was an acquaintance of the family members and was even known to associate with them at the Spahn Ranch. On July 17th, 1969, Waltz hitchhiked to the Santa Monica Pier so he could go fishing. His fishing pole was found abandoned at the pier, and his body was found the next day near Mulholland Drive. He had been shot 3 times in the chest. Though the family was reportedly shocked by Waltz's murder, his brother was convinced that Manson was responsible for the death and even called him in order to directly accuse him of his murder. The Los Angeles Sheriff's Department investigated Spahn Ranch in regards to Walt's murder, but no links were found, and the murder was never solved. Santa Monica. Santa Monica's nice, bro. It's just it's way too busy, and that was years ago. I went. It is a nice. It's beautiful. California's a beautiful state, but some of those like cities and shit, they're just like, ugh. John Philip Hott, 22, was an Ohio native who had moved to California and met Manson in the summer of 1969. He joined the Manson family and was amongst the group who was arrested in the October raid of the Klan for the Tate LaBianca murders. Manson suspected him of being an informant. On November 5th, 1969, Hott was associating with some members of the family. According to all present, Hott suddenly found a gun in the room, picked it up, and promptly shot himself while attempting a game of Russian roulette. However, when police investigated the death, they found that the gun, rather than having 0 bullets and 1 spent shell casing, instead contained 7 bullets and 1 spent shell casing. Moreover, the gun had been wiped free of prints. Additionally, a male witness who had held Hott's head after the shooting told Cohen he had entered the room to find a female Manson follower with the gun in her hand. Despite this, police concluded Hott had actually killed himself. What are you talking about? So there's just, it runs through the list. There's a lot more people they murdered, obviously. There's that whole lineup, but it goes through all that. So I want to see the possible murder motives. At trial and in later bestsellers, prosecutor Vincent Bogolozzi argued that the murders were intended to promote a race war called Helter Skelter. Others argue the murders were simply an attempt to free family member Bobby Boswell, who had been arrested for the murder of Gary Hinman, by creating copycat crimes to convince authorities that Hinman's real murderers were still at large. Others suggest even simpler motives, that the murders were about drugs or intimidation of Terry Melcher. Any of those are a crazy motive, dude. Trying to be like, nah, the killer's still out there. We're just gonna butcher a bunch of people so they think the killer's out there. They're not that stupid, bro. In November of 1968, the family had established headquarters in Death Valley's environs at the Myers and Barker ranches. They're always doing this on ranches. The former was owned by the grandmother of the family member, Catherine Gillies. According to Charles Watson and Paul Watkins, Manson and Watson visited an acquaintance who played the Beatles' double album, The Beatles, and became obsessed with the group. Watkins claimed Manson had been saying that racial tensions between blacks and whites were about to erupt, predicted that black Americans would rise up in rebellion, and that the Beatles song foretold it all in code. According to Watkins, by February, the family would create an album whose songs would trigger the predicated chaos. Murders of whites by blacks would be met with retaliation. A split between racist and non-racist whites would result in the whites' self-annihilation. Dude, this is crazy. The copycat. According to family members Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, Leslie Van Houten, Bobby Boswell, and others, the arrest of Boswell for the torture and murder of Gary Hinman was the catalyst for the family's ensuing murder spree. They wanted to convince police that the killers of Hinman were still at large. Truman Capote's interview of Boswell and that by Anne Louise Bardach in November of 1981 affirmed this account. Charlie Gunther, a police detective who investigated the murders, said that Boswell, he called the Spahn Ranch after he was arrested. The sole motive for those murders was to get Bobby out of jail. Balgalosi's co-prosecutor, Aaron Stovitz, said that he believed the motive for the Tate LaBianca murders was a copycat murders after Hinman. You know, it's getting hard to track all these murders, bro. At this point, we're tracing it back to bing, bing, bing. You could tell this story, hence why I've heard so many things about the main kind of like... let me make sure that book's called Chaos. The story is beyond a deep dive. There's that book Chaos, like I said, apparently unbelievable. Drugs. Other people suggested the motive was related to the drug dealing by Jay Sebring and Wojtek Frykowski and their connection with Charles Watson and Manson and a bad drug deal. For instance, Sebring's protege Jim Markham believes the murder were in response to a bad drug deal the day before, in which Manson went to the Tate's house to sell marijuana and cocaine to Sebring and Frykowski. Instead, the two men attacked and beat Manson. Yeah, I don't know about that. In an interview with police, Frykowski's friend Witold Kaskawara said that Frykowski had been involved with many criminals in the drug trade. In his later interview with Truman Capote, Bobby Boswell said they burned people on dope deals. Sharon Tate and that gang. Yeah, I don't know if I'm buying that this was a drug deal. I think that's on the weaker end. Ed Sanders and Paul Krasner uncovered information that Joel Rostow, the boyfriend of Sebring's receptionist, had delivered mescaline and cocaine to Sebring and Frykowski at Tate's house a few hours before the murders. During the Manson trial, Rostow and other associates of Sebring were murdered. Very convenient. Terry Melcher. In 1968, musician Dennis Wilson introduced record producer Terry Melcher to Manson. For a time, Melcher was interested in recording Manson's music as well as making a film about the family and their hippie commune existence. Manson met Melcher at 150 Cielo Drive, a house that Melcher shared with his girlfriend, actress Candice Bergen, and musician Mark Lindsay. Manson eventually auditioned for Melcher, but Melcher declined to sign him. There was still talk of a documentary being made about Manson's music, but Melcher abandoned the project after witnessing Manson fighting with a drunken stuntman at Spahn Ranch. You kidding me? That's what does his movie deal in, bro? Wilson and Melcher severed their ties with Manson, a move that angered Manson. Soon after, Melcher and Bergen moved out of the Cielo Drive home. The house's owner, Rudy Altabelli, then leased it to the film director Roman Polanski and his wife, actress Sharon Tate. Manson was reported to have visited the house on more than one occasion asking for Melcher, but was told that Melcher had moved. Some authors and law enforcement personnel who have theorized that the Cielo Drive house was targeted by Manson as revenge for Melcher's rejection, and that Manson was unaware that he and Bergen had moved out. However, family member Charles Tex Watson stated that Manson and company did, in fact, know that Melcher was no longer living there. And Melcher's former roommate, Mark Lindsay, stated, "Terry and I talked about it later, and Terry said Manson knew Melcher had moved because Manson or someone from his organization left a note on Terry's porch in Malibu." Okay, so what was the reason then? What was the reason? The Manson murders reportedly prompted Melcher to go into seclusion. When Manson was arrested, it was widely reported that he had sent his followers to the house to kill Melcher and Bergen. Manson family member Susan Atkins, who admitted her part in the murders, stated to police and before a grand jury that the house was chosen as the scene for the murders to instill fear into Terry Melcher, because Terry had given us his word on a few things and never came through with them. Terry's skimping out on the deal. This is what it sounds like Terry's doing. Back it up, Terry. Oh man, they're gonna whack him, dude. Melcher took to employing a bodyguard and told Manson prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi that his fear was so great he had been undergoing psychiatric treatment. Melcher was described as the most frightened of the witnesses at the trial, even though Bugliosi assured him that Manson knew you were no longer living on Cielo Drive. Here we go. In his 2019 book, Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s, Tom O'Neill re-examined the Manson case and found evidence Melcher may have been more closely involved with the Manson family than he admitted at trial. See, this is what I mean. We gotta do that book. That book is so in-depth. There's no way I'd be able to do a video on it on here. I'd have to sit down and actually read it. I think it's a long read too. It's a dense read. In reviewing police files and other data, O'Neill found evidence Melcher was associating with Manson in the 4-month period after the Tate LaBianca murders, but before Manson's arrest. These documents, seemingly hidden by Bugliosi, undermined claims that the Tate murders were intended to frighten Melcher in revenge for his refusal to record Manson's music. O'Neill also found documents indicated Melcher was having sex with a 15-year-old Manson member, Ruth Ann Morehouse. Dean Morehouse, Ruth Ann's father, and a Manson family member also had resided at 150 Cielo Drive with Melcher. Tex Watson would also frequently visit the residence. What? The Tate murders became national news on August 9th, 1969. The Polanski's housekeeper, Winifred Chapman, had discovered the murder scene when she arrived for work that morning. On August 10th, detectives of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, which had jurisdiction in the Hinman case, informed Los Angeles Police Department detectives assigned to the Tate case of the bloody writing at the Hinman house. According to Vincent Bugliosi, because detectives believed the Tate murders were a consequence of a drug transaction, the Tate team initially ignored this and other evidence of similarities between the crimes. The Tate autopsies were underway before the LaBianca bodies were discovered. Yo, he has you can't see it in the video, he has a swastika above his unibrow. It's tattooed. What? During the Tate autopsies, detectives working on the Gary Hinman case noticed similarities in the weapons used, the stab wounds, and the writing in blood on the walls. They also thought the case had something to do with narcotics. They brought the information to detectives working on the Tate murders. According to Detective Charlie Gunther, Bugliosi didn't want anything to do with the Hinman case. Hinman was a nothing case. Vince didn't want to prosecute it. Yeah, why didn't he want to prosecute it? Stephen Parent, who was fatally shot in the Tate Polanski driveway, was found to have been an acquaintance of William Garrettson, the caretaker who lived in the guest house. Garrettson had been hired by Rudy Altobelli to take care of the property while Altobelli was away. The killers encountered a parent when he was leaving after he had visited Garretson. Held briefly as a Tate suspect, Garretson told police he had neither seen nor heard anything on the murder night. He was released on August 11, 1969, after undergoing a polygraph examination that indicated he had not been involved in the crimes. The LaBianca crime scene was discovered at about 10:30 p.m. on August 10th, approximately 19 hours after the murders were committed. 15-year-old Frank Struthers, Rosemary's son from a prior marriage and Leno's stepson, returned from a camping trip and was concerned to see all of the window shades of his home drawn and his stepfather's speedboat still attached to the family car parked in the driveway. He called his older sister and her boyfriend. The boyfriend, Joe Dorgan, accompanied the younger Struthers into the house, where they discovered Leno's body. They called the police, who found Rosemary's body after officers arrived at the house. Oh man. On August 12, 1969, the LAPD told the press it had ruled out any connections between the Tate and LaBianca homicides. On August 16th, the sheriff's office raided Spahn Ranch and arrested Manson and 25 others as suspects in a major auto theft ring. Hey, whatever you gotta do to get them, I guess. That had been stealing Volkswagen Beetles and converting them into dune buggies. What? Weapons were seized, but because the search warrant had been misdated, the group was released a few days later. Idiots, bro. In a report at the end of August, the LaBianca detectives noted a possible connection between the bloody writings at the LaBianca house and the singing group The Beatles' most recent album. Yeah, it's a very strong connection, guys. I mean, come on. Helter Skelter in blood at every crime scene. They're like, yo, it might be him. Guys, there is so much more to this case, but I'm already over an hour of recording, so I think it might have to be a part 2. If you want part 2, let me know. There's still the trial. I mean, there's so much stuff to go through. Apparently we can't really react to the trials on YouTube because the copyright is yet again atrocious, apparently, with that stuff, because these fucking people, they want their money with crazy historical events like this. So be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, drop a comment, let me know some other cases I should be checking out. I think I want to cover, we still got to cover the Jack the Ripper. I want to do the true crime scream stabbings. Stoddard, Josie Stoddard or something like that, I think her name is. Let's see, the Golden State Killer, the Cleveland Strangler, Idaho Murders. So out of any of those, if any of those catch your eye, let me know in the comments. And that's it. Support on Patreon if you can. Get access to all the full-length reactions. And that's it. I appreciate you guys. I will see you in the next one.